Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Falquist. I am the technical specialist from the Center for Instructional Technology here at Ivy Tech Community College. So this month we are celebrating um, Disability Awareness Month for the month of March here in the state of Indiana. And one of the things that we are doing is we are having lots of webinars throughout the month to really just educate our faculty and staff about some of the services that Disability Support Services, DSS, provides throughout the state, and we're trying to just get local feels from different campuses. And joining me today for this webinar is the director of DSS from South Bend Elkhart campus, Sandra Senator Roberts, and she will be presenting a webinar on visual and hearing impairments in the classroom. So right now I'd like to introduce Sandra.
Thank you, Ryan. And yeah, we wanted to offer some resources for our faculty who may encounter students or with visual or hearing impairments in the classroom and may suddenly be faced with the dilemma of how to make materials accessible to students who don't see or don't hear or don't speak on their own. So this is where we want to start. In general, the mission statement for Disability Support Services is to provide access to all college programs and services and activities and facilities. And access to printed material to students with visual impairments is something that we don't often have to think about, so this, hearing impairments, students with hearing impairments who don't hear the instructions you give in the classroom, just challenges us to step out a little bit and think about what we have to do to make material accessible to everyone and make our complete environment accessible. Basically, everything that we're going to talk about today with visual and hearing impairments in the classroom is going to be recommending some slight changes that will offer access to students with vision and hearing impairments, but it's generally going to be suggestions that will be beneficial for everyone, but essential to some of your students. So first, a little bit on the technology that we have. Students with some vision can use ZoomText. ZoomText is on all of our student use computers throughout the state. If you have a student in your classroom who needs ZoomText and you notice that it's not on there, please contact your local DSS office on your campus and they will help you with that. You also could just submit a help desk ticket. Software has already been approved and we have it, So what ZoomText does is that it magnifies the screen. It offers other features too. You can go into the menu. Right here is where the student will start. The menu will pop up and they can determine what level of magnification works for them. It goes up very large. ZoomText has a dual monitor capacity so that you even can put two screens next to each other, and you can set it so that a sentence goes right across both screens, It has a color contrast feature, which a lot of people, sometimes we don't even have to think about what this might do or how it might benefit some students. But when students, even if they're colorblind or if they have low vision or students who are legally blind, certain shades on screen, like the distinction between gray and white, which we use on a lot of our base screens, or a contrast with a pale yellow, our student may not even see that difference, But for students who do have some vision, you can make a very large pointer. You can turn your cursor into several different options so that it's big and it blinks on screen, and so that the person with a visual impairment doesn't lose their place where their cursor is. We even have some focus lines. We have ways for you to, ZoomText has ways for a student to track what they're reading as they're going through on screen, and it's magnified. So This enlarges everything. The benefit of ZoomText is that a student who can't go through the regular menu bar in other programs can with ZoomText because the menu bar is enlarged itself. One thing that I would explain about ZoomText is that navigating around on screen is a little different once you're in ZoomText mode and magnified. You really have to kind of grab the document or grab the page and move it along. The natural way of scrolling on screen doesn't always work inside this program. However, any student who's using it in your classroom knows how to use it. Okay? If they don't or they need practice, they can come to DSS, but students generally who bring this software on their computer or who ask for it in your classroom, they know how to use it. Yeah, it is available to everyone on campus, so if you find that you don't have it in a room, please ask for it. We also have, most of our campuses do have these ZoomText keyboards. They're called ZoomText keyboards because they specifically pair with the ZoomText program that we just looked at in the way that these function buttons at the top can be pre-programmed so that a student can quickly switch back and forth from their online page to their document where they're writing with just the hit of a button. Again, this is designed for ease for people with visual impairments who just can't always readily or easily find where they are on screen. We also have this keyboard also offers the benefit of large font and high color contrast. We have them with black and white, and we also have them with black and yellow. Black and yellow is a nice alternative for many students with visual impairments. Just sometimes the white or light kind of washes things out, and it's not something that they can easily read. It's not true for every student with a visual impairment. The category of visual impairment is probably the one that has the widest range of variety among all of our categories of disability in terms of what a student needs or uses in the classroom. Again, if you need a keyboard like this in your classroom, contact your campus DSS person because we do have them on many campuses, and for any campus that doesn't have one when it's needed, we have ways of getting that for you. So the ZoomText is used by people who have some vision. So they might be categorized as legally blind or functionally blind, meaning they have some vision or some perception of light and shadow, or even just the kind of vision that magnification or color contrast will help. We also have totally blind students. When we do, then that gets very tricky, offering access to print-based material. There are a few programs out there on the market that totally blind users use, and many of our students right now use a combination because not every screen reader handles everything. So one screen reader might be better in the STEM subjects and others are better in the literary material. This is unfortunately something that our students with blindness have to wade through. But whatever screen reader or program that a student uses, we will make it accessible to them here on campus. So NVDA is an open access, free, downloadable software, so it's pretty good. Students who are blind can use it. It is a synthesized voice program, but blind users are pretty accustomed to that. And it reads everything on your screen. So sometimes you will get, your blind student screen readers will even read like the URL, they'll read like where you are on a page, things like that. But this program can be used with a mouse, but it also can be used with keyboard navigation. And NVDA can convert text into Braille for students for use on a Braille display, which they might have on their computers. If a student uses Braille or they have a Braille note taker, you will probably know that by working directly with the student, but we generally don't convert anything to Braille for the students. But if the student likes Braille and uses that, they can use this program to convert. JAWS is a pretty well-known screen reader for students who are blind or for any users in any field who are blind. It's by Freedom Scientific, and it doesn't handle everything. Like it really can be tricky if you have a blind student taking math tests using JAWS. But other than math, I'm going to say that JAWS is pretty accessible. It is keyboard-only navigation because, of course, blind students can't hover the mouse and click to get to where they need to be. So JAWS works pretty well inside Ivy Learn too. So you don't have to learn how to use JAWS in the same way you don't have to learn Braille if you don't need it. We just make these programs available for students who use them and know how to use them. But sometimes people ask, why would we have ZoomText and JAWS? And the reason is there's just a different level of ability and different levels of disability too. What student can and can't do determines what software they might be able to use. They obviously cannot use ZoomText when they have no sight. Probably wouldn't use JAWS though if they can use something that allows them to see on screen. The CCTV, this is again for students who are legally or functionally blind. It's a magnifier. So if you see in this picture here where the remote is, we put documents right under here. This camera lights up the document and then pulls it onto screen here. This is a 22-inch screen, and we can enlarge the screen to consist of just one word, really. Students generally don't need it enlarged that much. But the cool thing about the CCTV is that we can use it to give real-time access to students who have some sight in the classroom. So one of the ways we use it is in the math class. We can turn the camera to face the whiteboard to see what the teacher has written on the board. It will display on screen here for the student in the classroom. We can put a note taker with this student who records, writes down what the teacher is writing on the board, slips the page under this camera, and then the student can follow along in real time. Ideally, our goal is to always give every student access to the same material as everyone else in their class at the same time in the same environment, as much as we can in the same manner. So we really do like to be able to offer real-time access, and this is a great tool. Again, students who are completely blind cannot use this. This might be beneficial to someone in one class and not another, depending on the material and the nature of the course. So if you have a class that uses a lot of paper handouts, we definitely want the teacher to scan them in and make them available electronically. But on the fly, if you have a student who can use this piece of equipment, this helps to make those materials available in the classroom. This device also has a lot of the same features that we saw on ZoomText. So we can have the color contrast, the alternate cursor, and tracking items. It also has a feature where you can flip because the arm of the camera is limited, and if you have it aimed one way to show the whiteboard, but then you need to move it to a different area, there's a function on the remote that will allow you to flip the screen so that if the camera has to be set at an awkward angle, we can still adjust the screen to show what it's capturing. if you have a student who you think could benefit from this, you should contact DSS, but usually the student will have a relationship with DSS if they use this kind of equipment. And we do ask that the students come and let us know what they need, but if you do encounter someone in the classroom who hasn't registered with us, or you think this can benefit them, come and let DSS know. Students with visual impairments in the classroom. This is what you're going to see on your letter that comes from the student. When we have students who are completely blind, we like to send instructor letters ahead of time before the first day of class so that you know, but we have to get special permission from the student to do that, so you might not get notice before that student walks in. But you might see that they will need to use assistive technology and adaptive equipment in the classroom. That might be the CCTV. It might be they have their own computer set up running JAWS. They definitely will be recording class for class notes or typing to record notes. And they will work with us and get their textbooks in electronic format, and we'll convert that into a format that is compatible with their screen reader. The different screen readers are friendly to different formats. So while a PDF works very well for the CCTV, it's not a good thing for JAWS. So we have software that we can convert electronic material to different formats for different compatibility with different devices. Inside the classroom, as you're delivering instructions, just remember students may need to plug in their equipment, like if they're using a CCTV, if they're using their laptop, anything that they may need for access. Remember that they're using this equipment all day in their classes. So our students with visual impairments who use equipment in the classroom generally like to scope out the classroom ahead of time, find the seat where the electrical outlets are. Please keep this in mind, even if it seems inconvenient and you as the instructor need to adjust where you are in the classroom. Please definitely keep this in mind. As you're giving instruction, use directional language. Instead of saying, look over here or follow this one, check out the line in blue. It's better if you say, okay, we're going to do the exercise on the left right now. If you're telling students where to go or what to do in the classroom, definitely use directional language or language that is tied to, furniture. Okay, once you come into the door, it's the third table up on the right. That's a very good way to give them instructions about where to, go for their workstation and things like that. Just remember, it's very difficult. Even people who work with visual impairments, students with visual impairments on a regular basis, just forget, and then suddenly you're like, oh, it's over there. So just keep that in mind and work with the student directly and ask them to give you a reminder if you forget that. All handouts that you might use in your class, you should have scanned in and available in an electronic format. Anything that you can make available inside Ivy Learn is going to be very helpful. Remember that for students with visual impairments, electronic access is the way that we give them access to print-based material. Again, the high contrast, use black or white or other high contrast options instead of like light green or light yellow. And identify location of a chat box in any go-to sessions. Remember that in go-to, you might not know who's in your audience. Be sure to start by saying, if you need to type a response in, the chat box is down at the bottom right-hand corner. Let people know where that is. When testing, definitely students with a visual impairment need extended time during tests and quizzes, usually double time because they easily get lost on the page. Students will need an alternative answer sheet. It's really not important that a student turns in the Scantron bubble-filled sheet. A student might need to answer directly on a page underneath the CCTV, or they might need to mark the document directly inside JAWS. So if you provide text in electronic format for use with screen reading software, we at DSS, or usually the Campus Testing Center, will take care of matching it up and having it ready on the software program that they use when the student comes in for their appointment. If you have a student with a visual impairment who uses a service animal, please contact DSS. Please don't challenge that. These animals have been well trained, and contact DSS and learn about our college policy on service animals, and then ask your DSS person for some very practical advice on what to do in the classroom. Where should the animal be when we're in chemistry lab? There are some reasonable answers, and we have received, some pretty clear guidance from the courts over the years. So your DSS person is going to be a very valuable resource in that area. Now we're going to move to hearing impairments. This screen is specifically for, the top part is for students who are deaf. We have Sorensen Video Relay Service video phones on our campuses. Your campus should have them. Sorensen provides them free. So it is the picture here on the right. Ours don't look like this. Ours look like a large computer screen or just a TV screen. But there's a camera placed on top. Anyone who uses a video phone knows how to use it, okay? They just need to get access to the remote controls. But if a deaf student is on your campus and their car breaks down and it's at night and they need to make a phone call, like any other student might come back in and say, can I call a tow truck or a family member? The deaf student needs to be able to do that. And as a community college, we would even allow community members to come in and use the video phone if needed. Sorensen provides it free. Video relay interpreting is free to all people who qualify diagnosis of deafness, throughout the country. So this Sorensen maintains the software, they run the updates. It might just be a device on your campus that always looks unused, and that's okay. But at least it's there and it's available for deaf individuals. This is specifically for deaf individuals who use sign language to communicate. When they call someone, they will dial into the video relay interpreting service. They will see a video depiction of the interpreter. They sign through the camera to the interpreter. The interpreter will pick up the phone and call whoever they're calling, and she will voice that call. So again, this is not something that people should just sit down and try to Skype with or something. This is specifically something that connects a deaf person to a video relay interpreter. Some of our campuses have interpret-type devices, and this is for people who don't sign or people who do sign but are talking to people who don't. So this allows a face-to-face interaction in the way that all other dialogue or conversations on campus would take place. And basically people type on the keyboards. You see a text message kind of screen where you see both users are logged in and it says Sandra says this and Ryan says this, and they can, you talk back and forth. This is effectively used on college campuses for financial aid, advising, campus security. Even if you travel, you will see these at like hotels. They'll be available for people who need these kind of communication devices. So it's a pretty good option when you don't have a way to interact with someone who doesn't speak or hear what you're saying. And it does wrap up any session with a printed record that is time and date stamped with the usernames on it. So you could keep a copy of the advising session or what was discussed in the financial aid meeting. You could keep a copy in the student's file. Interpreters in the classroom can be tricky if you've never had interpreters in the classroom. Here's just a little bit about it. Deaf students who use sign language might have interpreters in the classroom. The deaf student and interpreter should work with the instructor to determine placement. student will need simultaneous visual access to the interpreter, the presenter, and other visual aids. So it's very likely that the interpreter will stand next to you as the teacher so that the student can see you and the interpreter and get the information at the same time. Please be aware there's a processing period for interpreting. The ASL grammatical structure is not the same as English word order, so you really are waiting for a translation from one language to another. The interpreter is typically 5 to 7 sentences behind the speaker, and please allow time for that interpreter to get that message to the student. And captions and transcripts are pretty important. If you are going to show a movie in your classroom, let the interpreter know. Consult with your campus IT staff if you need help with captions or transcripts. But any videos that you show in your campus, you should make sure ahead of time that captions are turned on or you have a transcript available for students. Remember that if you're using GoToMeeting in your classroom, you might not know who's in your audience, so it's just a good idea to have the captions turned on ahead of time. Speak directly to a student, not to the interpreter. Refrain from saying, tell her something, because this will be confusing. The interpreter literally voices what the deaf person is signing, and she signs what you as the speaking person are saying. So if you say tell her, they will sign tell her to the student, and that can be really confusing. And if you have questions about working with the interpreter, you can ask her directly about those questions, and she'll help you. During testing, interpreters can be available on test day to relay questions to the teachers or pass on directions or explanations given to the student, but they don't interpret test questions. And that's important for you to know, because if there is some interaction between student and interpreter during a test, it's usually to clear up something or to ask if the class has been told something, and if the student needs to ask for clarification with you, the interpreter will let you know. And the interpreter, if your class is like an upper level science class, the interpreter might ask for some specific information like access to PowerPoints ahead of time or a copy of the textbook. We could help with that too. And then finally, you might have a deaf student who doesn't sign. Deaf student who doesn't sign would have access in the classroom through what is called CART services, and it is real-time captioning or real-time transcription. So a student may have a note taker or a typist in the class, or a student may set up a microphone and in a discussion-based class ask everyone to pass it around as they're talking. In this way, the remote transcriptionist will hear what's going on in the classroom, and he or she will type it. And a transcript of the classroom discussion or the lecture comes up on screen in real time for the students. So we have to have a student who is a strong reader and takes everything in that way and takes everything in quickly. But usually if a person comes to you with CART services, it's not going to be new to them. They know how to do it. They will sit down at the start of each class and connect remotely to their transcriptionist and set up the microphone. So try to be flexible about that and understand really what it's doing and how it's giving access to the student who is deaf, who doesn't use sign language. And there's no time that CART transcription would be connected during testing if there's no audio component to the test, okay? And the last bit of information, I guess, just overall accommodating students with hearing impairments. Be sure that you face the student while you're talking. Ensure proper lighting in the classroom. Some students really depend on being able to see your face and read your lips to pair it together with what little bit they might be able to hear. But without that visual, then they can't make sense of the sounds that they're hearing. Provide written instructions for all verbal instructions delivered in the classroom. This sounds like such a daunting, task, but it's really not. Just be aware that, when everyone is shuffling things together and getting up to leave, this isn't the time to say, oh, hey, finish your homework and remember we have chapter 2 test the next time we meet. if you do say that, because I guess that is really a good time to say that, but if you do say it, please follow up with an announcement in Ivy Learn or write on the whiteboard. Okay, so it's just that kind of stuff. It seems daunting and tedious at first, but once you get used to that, it's pretty straightforward, you know. Um, all audio materials in the course, required or supplemental, should include captions or transcripts. And this helps to keep the college in compliance with the ADA. So we're all about that. If you need support with that, you can contact your campus IT people or ADA, or your DSS department. Um, Definitely, if you are running an online class, your campus's online technology team can check accessibilities of online course material ahead of time, and they will be able to come back and tell you exactly like where weaknesses are, or if you have a blind or deaf student in the class, this may be a problem. Do you have a backup plan? So we have these resources on campus, and I would suggest definitely using them and being aware of who's in your audience. Try to be sensitive to, sometimes students, I don't think that the disability needs to become part of the classroom discussion, is my point. So if a student comes to you privately and says, I noticed we didn't have captions turned on, I really need them turned on, then you can handle that without calling the student out or having a public discussion. If you realize you've started a video and forgot to turn them on, don't say, "Oh, Sally, I'm so sorry, let me fix that." Just go ahead and fix it, make the adjustment. And in general, if you have older movies that don't have, we don't have captioning capacity, then we can manage to get a second copy of them. We can send them to a caption company. But mostly when you're choosing materials for your classroom, we suggest that you choose accessible materials. And that is the end of what I have right now, Ryan.
All righty. Well, thank you, Sandra. That was an awesome presentation. I know we have a few folks that are listening to us, watching this live, and I could go ahead and unmute your microphones if you wanted to speak up, or you could just type any questions that you may have there in the chat. If you do, go ahead and, we'll take a moment here just to wait to see if any questions are coming up in the chat. I know one thing in particular, Sandra, that I was just going to ask, or make sure that is covered is, sometimes when you're teaching, and I teach on the side too, you will get someone with some sort of impairment and you don't know what to do necessarily. But I know that even when I've taught a class online, that someone has always reached out to me from the local DSS. So chances are likely that you're never going to be surprised, correct? I mean, there's always going to be somebody probably working ahead of time to make any sort of arrangements that are needed, correct?
That's generally the case, but in the online courses, we don't always have that benefit of the knowledge ahead of time because, particularly students who are deaf might be attracted to online courses. They're not reliant then on interpreters. They do most of the access of the material is through reading, and they might not need to tell most instructors that they're deaf until they come across a video in your class that isn't captioned.
Okay.
Then that's when you might get the information. So usually if it's something we like to tell you, we would like to work with you ahead of time, but that's why it's good to have the materials checked ahead of time and everything available ahead of time.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I do work in the Ivy Tech online department. So, and that's one thing that we are working with all of our courses that we create is that they are approved, they're ADA compliant, everything is gone through, and that there are videos that are already captioned in them, et cetera, et cetera. But there's always going to be some things that may be missed. Maybe it's a link, maybe it's a third party, like a vendor, like a Pearson or some sort of publisher that for whatever reason video wasn't captioned. So in those circumstances, they could always reach out to their DSS, correct, just in case they do find out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions going on right now in the chat. So we'll go ahead and end this presentation. Again, I want to thank Sandra, Senator Roberts from the South Bend Elkhart campus for her time today and giving this great presentation on visual and hearing impairments in a classroom. Again, we have a nice, I guess, assortment, you could call it, of different webinars throughout the month of March here that we're celebrating Disability Awareness Month for Ivy Tech Community College. So again, those are published. There's a couple different places that you can go. One easy place that you can go that I know because I'm in charge of it and I put it there is right there in Ivy Learn. When you log into Ivy Learn, you'll see one of the announcements there is listing all of our scheduled webinars, and then there's also a link to the college's YouTube channel, which is where we will post the videos after we record them, and I'll put them up there and make sure that they're captioned as well as getting transcripts. So those are available to anyone that is needed or anybody that wants to catch up on any of our webinars that we've recorded, and we plan on keeping those around, so they're not going anywhere. So we hope to build up our own repository, if you will, of webinars and just information that anyone relative to DSS, whether it be faculty, staff, or even students that want to see how things are done at Ivy Tech can go to our YouTube channel and see different videos on different subject matters throughout the year. So thank you again, Sandra. Thank you for those that were able to join us today. Looks like Liz and Peggy. So we appreciate you joining us live, and anybody that watches the recording, thank you for your time. We'll go ahead and end this, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.